They told me retirement would be the quiet part of life, but my quiet ended the day a high-voltage pole leaned like a drunk giant behind my house, swaying above the neighborhood because the HOA president decided to dig into my hillside. That night, I sat in the dark boots still on, waiting for the crash that could kill someone. And the worst part? They blamed me. My name's Alan Garrison. After decades in the Army, I wanted nothing more than to sit on my porch, sip coffee, and finally breathe. Ridgeview Hills seemed perfect cedar-shingled house, modest but solid, perched above the neighborhood like a lookout. I thought I'd left the battles behind. Turns out, the real war was with a woman named Karen Jennings. Karen was the new president of the Ridgeview Lakeside Community Association, an HOA that wasn't near any lake and had no sense of community. She wore pastel sweaters like armor pearls, like medals, and carried a clipboard like a weapon. My first run-in with her was laughable. She told me my little decorative flag violated standardization guidelines. I laughed. She didn't. A week later, I got a warning, then a fine. That was the opening volley. At first, I shrugged it off. I'd seen enough petty power plays on military bases to know how people inflate themselves with a title. I paid my dues, mowed my lawn, and tried to ignore the HOA's passive-aggressive newsletters. But Karen wasn't satisfied with flags and fines. She wanted to carve her legacy into our neighborhood, and she started with my slope. One April morning, I heard the sharp beeping of heavy machinery. Not a car backing up, this was industrial bone rattling. I looked down my hill and saw a yellow backhoe chewing into the base of my property. Men in vests marked the ground with spray paint stakes already planted portable toilet setup. They were settling in for a job. I marched down, asked one of the workers what was going on. He shrugged. Drainage trench. HOA ordered it. Said slope was communal runoff. My slope. I had the deed, the plat map, every scrap of paperwork. That hillside was mine, and I'd reinforced the drainage myself after the first winter rain. But Karen didn't answer my calls, and the HOA office was locked. It was like shouting into a void. I called an old friend now, a property rights lawyer. She confirmed my gut feeling this wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a violation. She told me to document everything, so I did. Camera out, I filmed the backhoe biting deeper into my land, zoomed in on tire tracks well past the property line, recorded the scar of fresh dirt. But none of us knew what lay beneath. The utility pole. An old high-voltage tower anchored into that very soil. The more they dug, the weaker its spine. I didn't realize it yet, not fully. But the sound of machinery grinding into my slope would soon turn into the sound of an entire neighborhood at risk. The next morning, the backhoe had crept further up. No cones, no caution tape, just raw excavation cutting a diagonal path toward my retaining wall. I waved down. The operator yelled that he was trespassing. He ignored me. The bucket swung, not toward the trench, but dangerously close to the transformer pole. My stomach dropped. That night, I walked into the HOA board meeting, jeans boots, and my old army jacket with the faded name patch. Karen sat in the middle like a queen behind her folding table. I confronted her head-on. "You're digging illegally into my property." She smiled like a schoolteacher correcting a child. The board approved the project. It's shared runoff land. I pulled out photos. 10 feet inside my lot, I said. Not shared, not communal mine. Neighbors gasped. Karen's smile cracked, but she dismissed me. This isn't a courtroom. No, but I knew the fight was only starting. The backhoe disappeared the next day, but the damage was done. After a light rain, the slope sagged subtle but deadly. The base of the utility pole started leaning just a few degrees, but enough that I felt the hairs on my neck rise. That night, the power flickered, then went out completely. I stepped outside with a flashlight and saw it, the pole tilted, 15 degrees wires trembling like live snakes. I stood in the dark boots on flashlight by my bed, waiting for the collapse. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind, felt like the end. I sat there wondering, was I the fool? Maybe Karen was right. Maybe fighting the HOA wasn't worth it. Maybe I should let them bulldoze, let the bureaucracy roll over me. For the first time in years, I doubted myself. But then the pole shifted 2 more inches. I thought of the families below, kids asleep in their beds. I thought of Dennis, my neighbor, who sat on his porch with his old dog every evening. If that pole came down, it wouldn't just take out power, it could take lives. That's when the soldier in me woke up. I wasn't just some bitter retiree. I was a man with a duty. I called 911. I'm reporting an imminent infrastructure collapse involving a high-voltage power line. That got their attention. Within minutes, police cruisers, fire trucks, and utility crews swarmed my street. Neighbors gathered whispering. Then, Karen arrived in her spotless white SUV, lip gloss shining, acting like it was a PTA fundraiser. She tried to spin the story, telling the site supervisor this was all part of a runoff improvement. He cut her off. "Did you notify the utility company before digging near this pole?" She froze. "You were wrong," he said flatly. "You're lucky this hasn't killed anyone." For the first time, Karen had no words. The crews braced the pole, rerouted power, taped off the slope, but the HOA doubled down. The next day, I found a letter in my mailbox accusing me of obstruction and warning of fines and legal action. I laughed. They endangered lives, and I was the criminal. That's when I decided no more defense. Time to go on offense. I dug through records, old blueprints, property covenants, and there it was, proof. Not only was the slope mine, the HOA had never owned it. They had submitted forged maps shifting property lines 30 feet onto my land. Fraud, plain and simple. At the emergency HOA meeting, the room buzzed with tension. I stood up, placed 3 items on the table in front of Karen: my original survey, the fake map the HOA filed, and a certified engineering report that blamed their excavation for destabilizing the pole. The room fell silent. "You redrew my property line," I said. "Illegally, without permits, without notifying the county, and your arrogance nearly killed someone." Neighbors stood one by one. Dennis said if he hadn't knocked on my door, my wife and I would have been in the backyard when that pole came down. Others echoed him. People I barely knew finally speaking. Karen stammered about good faith about a consulting firm. I shot back. That firm lost its license 3 years ago. They couldn't sign a grading plan if their life depended on it. Gasps filled the hall. Karen's mask cracked. The city council took over soon after. They reviewed the evidence, the forged documents, the testimonies. One by one, neighbors told stories of petty fines, threats, intimidation. It wasn't just my slope anymore, it was every injustice Karen had piled on this community. Then, the verdict came down like a gavel strike. The Ridgeview Lakeside Community Association suspended board members, removed, and Karen barred from HOA leadership pending investigation. She sat there, rigid face flushed, clipboard replaced by trembling hands. For once, she couldn't bully, couldn't fine, couldn't shout her way out. She was done. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just exhaled. The battle was over the moment the truth stood taller than her lies. And that's the lesson: power built on fear always collapses the moment someone decides not to be afraid.